Welcome back, folks. This is episode 162. It's about payroll. We have an amazing guest today, Tiana Neal. We're joined by Tiana, who resonates across the HR and payroll space, a powerhouse professional, trailblazer who brings heart, system thinking, and real world strategy to every conversation. Tiana Neal is a dynamic HR payroll and HRIS leader with over 15 years of experience delivering operational excellence, digital transformation for organizations ranging from Fortune 500 giants to nimble startups. She's a master at bridging strategy, systems, and service, leading global payroll and benefit operations, optimizing HCM tech stacks, and helping businesses thrive at the intersection of compliance and care. As the founder of Transcenders Consulting Group, Tiana helps companies reimagine workforce operations through precision and purpose. And if that wasn't enough, she is also a host of the Human Role podcast, where she dives deep into real conversations shaping the future of work, technology, equity, leadership, and everything in between. Today, we'll be diving into the beautiful and sometimes messy dance between HR and payroll, from recruitment and onboarding to time tracking, benefits compliance, and the critical data flow that powers great employee experiences. We'll also explore a hot debate: who should payroll report to, HR or finance? Tiana, welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you, Brian and Walter. Definitely. I really appreciate that warm introduction. But yes, really thankful for you all to have me on your podcast as well. Just being around like-minded individuals. So I'm really happy to be
That's
here
right.
and to really talk about
Yeah.
this very important topic that has
Yeah,
followed me throughout my
absolutely.
career. I'm
Before
sure
we
the
get
same
into
for yours as
our
well.
structured questions, we always ask, how'd you get into payroll? And then more importantly, why'd you stay?
Yeah, so maybe you all are different. Maybe you're a little bit of a unicorn. I
Walt is
legitimately,
different.
like
He
most
chose it.
people, fell into payroll. Oh, really? Okay, I gotta hear your story. But from my end, I just graduated from college. Economy was bad, and then happened to run into some managers that worked at ADP, and they sent
Ooh.
over my resume, and I started there in the small business division. And I never thought I really liked numbers when I was in college, undergrad, but surprisingly, I kind of did. And then
Some
I
people like it.
awkwardly liked tax. It's kind of weird, and then got yeah, and then got into, heavy implementations. And yes, it just followed me, I think, from my end. Once I realized just the importance of payroll, like I like the underdog feeling. And so, I'm sure you have felt it in your career
Hmm.
sometimes. Payroll is a bit of an afterthought at times. And I'm really, if I
Oh
had a
my
dollar for every
gosh.
time I heard, it's just a click of a button, right? It's like, it is total compliance. Like it's so there's so many things that go into it. And yes, my mindset set just shifted, after some years of being in there, on just how important it is and the security of it all, the importance of it all. And hey, we can bring in some bacon, but we don't necessarily bring in the bacon per se, but we make sure it gets paid fluently so that you don't have any issues each pay week. And that's a whole task within itself. So yeah, so I stayed. I like the challenge. Every day is different. You think you have your processes
Yeah.
together, but there's
Hmm.
always someone. There's always that one employee.
Yes.
There's always that one state law or change or something that is like, wait, what did this state decide to do? Who's the
Amazing.
so yeah, so it keeps me on my
Well, you
toes.
Awesome.
must
That's
love
why
it.
I'm
So
still
I'm going
here.
to jump right into the questions here
Yep.
then. So, how would you describe the
Okay.
ideal relationship between HR and payroll in a modern organization?
Yeah. So I would say from day one, just to make sure that there's a heavy partnership, right? And that there's not any type of separation in roles or duties from HR to payroll, even down to like finance, just because I think ideally it's just keeping that communication open. What I've experienced is that a lot of times payroll is a bit of an afterthought. And the reality is, the minute you're sending that offer letter, the minute you're putting in something, if you have everything automated through your ATS into your hiring, onboarding, into HRIS, down to the general ledger. I mean, of course, the job titles don't go on W-2s, but that's important when an employee logs in, to your HRIS system. But the hire dates are critical for when they're going to get paid. Of course, social security numbers, just verifying that those checks are in place, and all the way to the pay rates, the pay types. Did you properly test if this person's job description is hourly or salary? Do you even have a job description? All of those things tie into payroll, from benefits enrollments to the pre-tax deductions. There are just so many things that I think from the start set of when a recruiter is just trying to recruit and get, sometimes unfortunately rush and get a body in the door, that they don't even realize a wrong job code or wrong department can just throw off the whole trajectory of budgets, into the general ledger, can really mess up the payroll flow of things. And then if someone's paid wrong, or if there's a report that's wrong, it looks bad on payroll. So I that just naturally causes issues in a department when, we could avoid that early on. So I think in modern day would be have the communication going from day one, get your processes and SOPs in place. We understand at our level that sometimes, if a C-suite executive comes down, sometimes the process, has to be, you have to adjust to it, just depending on the situation. But if we can stick to that same process, 95, 98% of the time, and keep that communication open, we can alleviate a lot of
Absolutely.
behavior
And what's the term that's kind of like become popular in these last couple of years? So at least for me, I haven't heard it until recently, where they said garbage in, garbage out. Right. So if you put bad data in, it could potentially produce a bad result. Right.
Absolutely. No, go ahead, please.
Correct. And I think I was going to say, people don't realize, recently I've been trying to explain to people my role. And I'm like, look, the W-2 you get at the end of the year where you just go and file and you have no issues? Like, our responsibility is to make sure every payroll, when you're not paying attention to your pay stub, all the deposits are going through, so that when you do go to file, you can just wait a couple weeks to get your taxes back, or see what you owe potentially. We make sure that that's pretty, Otherwise, you don't want to even know the issues on how long it takes to correct something like that, right?
You're a true payroll person. I love it. You made me think of Anita Latink and her book, How to Select Your Next Payroll. I always quote her, all my little notes here and stuff. And she says in there, payroll starts when HR information is either created or changed for the employee profile. So and you took it through so lovely. That's awesome. So now, where do you see companies most commonly drop the ball when it comes to time tracking or benefits impacting and specifically impacting payroll?
Yeah, good question. I think if you don't have the right automation set up when it comes to potentially overtime calculations, lots of people don't know about the FLSA overtime too. I think that's a big critical factor, because it's standard for people to at least dip into overtime, I think, on certain time and attendance rules. And so just having those back-end setups properly constructed, I think, is always really important. And then also, too, tying into the benefits piece is, if you're going through and changing your plans, where open enrollment season is almost upon us, right? Negotiations are going on now for open enrollment season in a few months. And just a simple rate change, right, in the system. Lots of people don't realize that. Just making sure from an HR stance, if you're handling benefits, that the employees are enrolling in the right plans, that those plans do have the right rates in place, because that just messes up all the pre-tax deductions, and it's like a lot of times they don't realize that. It's like, oh, okay, well, we can just make up for it later. It's like, no, but we can't, but you don't understand the process that we have to go through, just to make sure the calculations, are correct. Don't even get me started on 401k and if there's an employer match and all that. It's just we don't want to get down that rabbit hole. But yes, I just think making sure that calculations are built in properly. Overtime, double time. We understand that, there's the federal laws, but also depending on your state laws, If you have any employees in California, unfortunately, that's per day overtime if they're dipping over. Meal penalties. So we just want to make sure that now that remote is becoming so popular, that you are communicating with your payroll team when you're opening up in another state, because that opens up a whole nother rabbit hole of laws that we have to abide to. And it is very critical. These attorneys are just waiting for you to mess up and get class actions. I have held so many companies with class actions, it's not even funny. So yes, just making sure that all of that is set up. And again, I see a lot of postings of, does payroll need to be at the table or not? I mean, I'm of course biased, but yes, no issues with my CHROs and my HR directors that, I love, but a lot of them don't like to dip into the system. And so yes, they can be at the table. We love that. But if they don't understand the back end knowledge, it's a bit unfair.
You made me think about
not have your
the employee experience as well when you were talking about the tax calculation piece of it. I had an employee recently make transfer companies. The benefits didn't move over properly, and this person noticed the net amount was wait, whoa, I'm not making more anymore. Whoa, I was hold on, don't worry, we'll fix it. It's because the pre-tax deductions weren't there, lowering the tax liability, changing those taxable wages. So it just made me think of that, because these things happen all the time, and the employee experience is critical, and it's important.
Yeah. Look,
don't.
Kudos to the employee who noticed. How many employees don't even log in and look at their pay stub? Most employees don't do that, right? So that was a bit of an anomaly. But a lot of times, to everyone out there listening, lots of times we don't find this out until months later, over a quarter, and we've got to go back and do amendment, and it just opens up a whole. And that's that dips into the budget, because that's costly depending on your HCM platform. So I'm glad your employee paid attention, but lots of times employees don't really even look at their pay stub.
Most people don't. So let me ask you this: in what ways do payroll and HR directly shape the employee experience, especially in their first 90 days?
First 90 days critical, because in my opinion, at least, if your process is off in that hiring and onboarding process, if HR is not there, and if they don't talk to payroll, and if your pay stubs is messed up, if you're logging in, if your job title is incorrect, if your vacation time isn't calculating properly, and you're trying to kind of plan for your future time off, it's who wants to work for a company like that if your foundation of your business is not there? So first 90 days is very critical, because I think that gives an employee the comfort in knowing whether or not they're a good employer. They're working for a good employer. I would say that if you're coming in, if the process is off, if the onboarding, new hire orientation isn't together, if they don't know where to go to clock in and out, if they don't know who to reach out to if they have questions about anything, business related, if they don't know anything about the handbook, and if it's hard for them to communicate with HR and payroll, right? So lots of times they talk to an HR person. If HR isn't walking them over to payroll or saying this or having a group meeting with them and so forth, and if they're just go down the hall or talk to this person, it's it just shows, it doesn't show well at all. So it's very critical, I would say, to just show that the company foundation is solid, to make the employee feel comfortable, to really realize that this could be a long-term employment.
I'm a big champion of, and Brian can tell you, from his interactions with me during our relationship, I believe that employers could do a better job of educating the employee, which will empower them, right? And if we did a better job, like you were saying, Tiana, with how we present that information to them, and how we guide them through the process, that can make a world of difference. Because there's a stat that Brian and I found in doing some research on one of the other shows, that after 2 paycheck mistakes, an employee starts looking for another job immediately, because, like you spoke to, that trust is broken.
Yes. One thing that I thought of too was like the paycheck is a reflection,
Mm-hmm.
right, of every decision HR has made, right? Not only just from the hiring process to the job code to the specific benefit tier. And look, I mean, sometimes we can't prevent what makes an employee upset and what makes them leave at times, but just like if you're starting off wrong and if the job title isn't correct, that's going on the employee's resume. If they're looking for a new job, if a background check comes through and you have to do a verification of employment. I mean, if someone is, in maintenance but has a job title in finance, that just makes them look like they've misled another company. It just makes them even more angry. Then here
Yep.
we go, they're on a review site making a bad review. So it can just triple. It could be a
Yep, that's
total
so true.
domino effect. Yeah, so I just think exactly like
Yeah.
simple communication from
That's a
start to
perfect segue
finish.
from
I
my
think
from
goes a
my
really long
next
way.
question. Like you said, from start to finish, right? When in terms of hire to retire or transition, right? How do you how do we as payroll and HR professionals that operate in fast moving or multi-state organizations, how can we ensure that compliance is maintained during that process from hire to retire?
Yeah. So interesting enough, I just posted an episode today as far as like AI being a partner and not like a specific like replacement, right? So I think from our side too is like we need to start using these tools. Like we've got to start utilizing them because the laws are ever changing, and we don't know what's to come. We don't
I don't
know.
know if I still have you guys or if
We
I
we really don't
froze.
know. Like when a law is coming out and they're saying, "Hey, it's going into effect in June." Someone could have a case in
Hmm.
there where maybe the night before it changes and it extends out,
No.
right? So, sorry, do we need to stop?
Oh wait,
Do I still
the
have
wall
you
drop.
guys?
Oh,
Okay,
wall dropped off. No, it's okay. You can
but
keep
yeah,
going.
yes, yeah. Okay. But yes, so we never know like what's really going to happen with these laws. So I think from our side is just we need to have spot checks every month if we can. At minimum, I would say every quarter. But I think we need to start auditing things, continuing to have the communication open, know who we're hiring, know who's coming down the pipeline to potentially get hired, maybe before they're getting hired, so we can kind of already start spot checking what the laws are, and then just and then go from there. But definitely
Yeah.
utilizing our tools, whether it be artificial intelligence or a website like Littler, some sort, reaching out to all of our partners. Most
Hmm.
companies nowadays have a general counsel or a law firm that they kind of tag team off of, and just making sure that we're covering all bases from every legality possible, from federal to state. We all know that, beginning of January and middle of July, if you're in this industry, that
Oh yeah.
minimum wage increases come up. And then, if they're incorporated, unincorporated, that's a whole thing. And so, and then sometimes, if companies try to just get the minimum, your employees could go up a
Hmm.
block and
Yeah,
get $1 extra. So you want to be
I've had
competitive.
that
So there's lots
in
of
the
things to
optical. When I was in
consider.
the optical industry, we would lose these folks for $1 or $2 an hour at a time, and it was like, and it would just bounce around. Someone would threaten just to get the raises because they were so, how can I say, they were so sought after, they're licensed opticians and licensed folks, so they had the leverage and they would just go. That is, yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay. Wait, Walt is having Wi-Fi issues, so we'll continue if he gets back on. Great. If not, we'll finish. So what's your take on the debate? Should payroll report to finance or HR, or even as a standalone? Me too. Yep.
I'm
Me
all
too.
for standalone, just FYI people.
Yep.
But yeah, all for that because we're a bit of both. But truly, I think at some point, if your company is just not there yet, if you're small or middle market, to me, I think it just depends on your company structure, but more so your like payroll person. Just because there are some payroll people that really just like to be behind the systems, to the numbers, doing their process. Sometimes I feel like that's a little more on like the finance side. But then if you're wanting to dip and dab in more things outside of payroll, maybe get into benefits, maybe kind of see the HR generalist side of the world, then you might want to be on the HR side of the house. So I have been in the midst of so many fights of who to report into. I have reported into HR directors, VPs of HRs, controllers. So yeah, I would just say make it work to wherever you're put, but it really is kind of like depending upon how your company structure is flowing, what type of person you are,
I like the way
what
you
your
put it.
career
And I'll tell you what
trajectory,
we've
would be.
learned is it's pretty much split in the US, 50-50 on who we report to. But in the UK, on the other side of the pond, from what I'm told, it's strictly financial function, a finance. Yeah, so it's very interesting. And then I always used to say, "Oh, it doesn't matter because we have the same job to do anyway." But research says that the difference that they've found is that when it reports to finance, that we tend to be a little less what I've been saying, our desk side banner is a little off. We're a little bit more dry and not as customer service oriented. But when we report to HR, we're more customer service oriented. So I think that regardless, I hope folks have been realized, because I realized that in my career as well, where I had to be like, wait a minute, I gotta build the soft skills as well. And regardless of who I report to, I have to be customer service oriented because the employees need, they have questions, they need to know, and you can't just, hit them with a kind of a abrupt statement. And you know what I mean? Like they're having problems with their checks. You got to try to give them some comfort and some help, But yeah, so let's see. Oh, no, 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 go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, because you was gonna say, because that's your
Yes,
client.
absolutely.
Like employees are your client, right? That's how I look at it too. It's like that's who we have to serve. And then so many times, even it's naturally this happens to people who it may be their first job where they don't understand taxation, or they come in like, hey, my check's short, and it's like, oh no, you have to consider taxes. But it also happens to people who are higher level. You think you're getting a $20,000 increase, right? And so you think it's going to be something big. And I've gotten so many questions like, my increase didn't get put in. I'm like, it definitely did. I'm like, oh, but you got to split it over all these pay periods. And then you get tax more because now you're in a new bracket. It's like, it's not that much more, each pay period. So, yeah. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's always a learning experience. And I've had many employees come in, to your point, really angry, upset, thinking that their pay is wrong. And then showing them like the circular E for the IRS, or showing them this, 5 to 10 minutes, or sending that email